Welcome everyone. Thank you for staying after school today. We will have a brief discussion about the legal and ethical standards that you should maintain as teachers, and then you will be free to go. Today we are focusing specifically on standards for behavior regarding student assessments. As you know, you have some freedom to create your own assessment instruments, especially for formative assessments. For summative assessments, I would like you to remember that each test's content should match as closely as possible the learning objectives you have been teaching. This way, we can consider a student's score on the test to be valid. Please keep in mind that if a test score is very different from your student's previous scores, we may have a problem with the test's reliability. This is also true at the individual level. There may have been extenuating circumstances for a particular student. Was he ill? Was he troubled? Was he cheating when he was taking the test? Please question a student privately and not accusatorily if his test score is significantly inconsistent with his past assessments. As a school, we want our assessments to be proof of our students' true abilities. On that subject, a few parents have complained about the number of pop quizzes that you all are administering. You are free to use pop quizzes as a formative assessment, but I would recommend that you do not use the scores in your student averages. I recommend that you discuss the answers with your students immediately after the pop quiz is over and explain why the correct answers are correct. For assessments for which you intend to count the score, please tell your students in advance what they need to know in order to obtain an accurate score of their knowledge. You are responsible for telling your students when the test will be, what it will cover, how you will grade it, and how the score will be weighted regarding their average for the 6 weeks. If you are going to use a scoring rubric, please give a copy to your students in advance of the test. Let's discuss some additional ethical issues. I hope this goes without saying, but you are responsible for using scoring rubrics or any other subjective methods of scoring in a fair and consistent manner for all of your students. I know you all can probably recognize your students' handwriting, but please try to put the identity of each student out of your consciousness as you are using subjective scoring. Concentrate on the student's test content. We must avoid any bias you may have about individual students and how you expect them to perform. It may be a subconscious bias, but it could influence how you determine a student's score. On the subject of biases, please avoid stereotypes and experience differentials when you are creating your assessments. I am confident that none of you will create something offensive, but stereotypes can creep in without our realizing it. We want our materials to represent the diversity and the opportunities America has. So if your tests include life situations or story problems, make sure any people names or roles that you use demonstrate a good balance among races and genders. Also, when you create your tests, please keep in mind the typical day-to-day experiences that your students may likely have. Don't assume that they have seen the whole world on television. Avoid using allusions to things that they are likely that are likely to be outside of most students' scope of awareness and that may confuse them. Do not make answering a question correctly dependent on understanding something beyond a student's age or experience. Regarding timely scoring, I know you all stay very busy, but I ask that you score and return students' tests within 1 week after the tests are administered. This especially applies to your more heavily weighted tests. We must give the students the chance to review their scores and ask you any questions about them in a timely manner. Be prepared to explain your rationale for the answers and for the fairness of your scores. And please do not be ashamed to correct a scoring error that you have made. We all make human mistakes, and it is the only ethical thing to do. Now let's discuss some legalities. In the future, our school will have a few more students with disabilities and individualized education programs, or IEPs. I just want to remind you all that our school is legally obligated to provide all of the testing accommodations that the child's study team has included in the IEP. Some of these accommodations may include extended testing time, a person to read test content out loud, or a person to write down the student's responses. These accommodations are just a few possibilities. We will comply with anything specified in a student's IEP. Also, some of you have received the training to administer the state's standardized test and will be doing so in the next 2 weeks. I realize that you were trained to keep all of the test questions and answers secure. However, I want to add my own emphasis on security. Our school cannot tolerate any excuse for allowing questions or answers from the standardized test to be compromised. Although we are a private school, the results from these tests are used by the state to assess the functions of our school. It is vital that the state obtain results that are a true reflection of our school's performance, good or bad. If the student scores indicate that the state must put us on a performance improvement plan, then we will have to adjust to that plan, no matter how laborious it may be. The end goal is better education for our students. I do not expect that our school will need a PIP, but I want to emphasize that no one is helping students get a better education if our standardized test results are misrepresented. On the subject of information security, I want to remind everyone to keep all of your students' assessment scores confidential among the students, the parents, and the school. You should never purposefully communicate a student's score or performance to another student. If you are keeping notes on a student's assessment progress or achievements, please keep those kinds of records under lock and key. Our school purges paper records like these that are more than 2 years old. You should turn your 2-year-old records in to the school office where they will be shredded. If you use computer files for keeping notes on students, the school's IT managers will delete such files that are more than 2 years old. Now I want to turn your attention to the Texas Education Agency's Educators Code of Ethics. TEA's code is itemized in the Texas Administrative Code, Title 19, Part 7, Chapter 247, Although we are a private school, we conform to Texas's enforceable standards. Regarding the assessments that you create and the standardized ones that you may administer, please look specifically at Rule 247.2, Standard 1.6, Standard 3.1, Standard 3.3, and Standard 3.4. In summary, as educators in the state of Texas, you must not falsify records or misrepresent student facts. You must not reveal students' confidential information or discriminate against students. I expect you to become familiar with all of Rule 247.2 by accessing the website https://texas.gov/educators/investigations/educators_of_ethics and clicking on the link for Educators Code of Ethics. I have a form here for each of you, which includes the web address. On it is a statement that you have read and understood the enforceable standards for educators, and it has a place for your signature and date. Please utilize the website to read the standards, then sign and date the form and return it to me by 1 week from today. As you read the standards, please pay special attention to Standard 1.10. You must be of good moral character and worthy of teaching students, the youth of our state, in order to teach here. Please consider that we are a Christian school. Our ultimate obligation to adhere to laws and ethical behavior is to God. His standards are higher than state standards or school standards. He expects us to obey the laws of the land and to obey His laws. Romans 13, verses 1 through 2, tells us that we should submit to the authorities God has established, and not to do so is rebellion against Him. By teaching here, you have committed yourselves to maintain Christ-like behavior as much as possible in all that you do, even outside of school. Please remember that you may be the first example of a Christian that some of our students see. According to Matthew 18:6, we must not cause any of these young ones to stumble spiritually. We have an accountability to God for these students, which we must take seriously. Well, thank you all for staying and listening today. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to see me after we have dismissed. Please pick up the statement sheet before you leave. And now you are dismissed. Have a blessed evening.